video play has to be cleared. Well, in other words, the video play has to be cleared to upload to upload assignment. So I'm testing that right now. I have the video playing to see if I can upload my homework for the essay. Because we are ending up
Yeah, I need to go to the office and I think publish that.
yeah, I'm running the videos until
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, if you run into any difficulties, let me know. Yeah.
The other thing that's going to be new is for the baby, correct?
The what?
If you ask anything new, is anything new today? And the only thing that will be new is child or infant. You think?
I guess so. Yeah. Martel, you're okay? Well, is there anything you guys want to talk about? Or should I just like leave?
Let's talk about property.
About what?
Property is like conclusion in this book.
Property?
Property, like low income, not poor, like physical poor, and just low income. We talk about parents, whatever subsidy.
No, what is it you want to talk about?
We could talk about
Like how poverty impacts people?
yeah, we discussed that already, but we can see that.
And why are you reading that book?
Wisdom.
Ugh. Okay.
Love. There's different types of definitions of love. Everybody has different marks for not one definition, but types of love of using the wisdom. But there's a lot of wisdom in there, you know, from different types of speakers and quality, grace.
Yeah, I don't like the author.
Amir? Why not?
He's Middle Eastern. Oh. So anyone else with any? Yeah.
Well, related to poverty, I guess. Two or three of the new videos are about Siddhartha, right? Who is definitely doesn't have anything. He has no possessions or any power, seemingly. So I'm just wondering how you seem to family member?
Yeah.
Siddhartha? Yeah, he has his friend, right?
Govinda. Yeah.
Who leaves early on, right? I don't know. I was just wondering what you seem to have hold a lot of value for having a sense of power in your life.
Well, first of all, forgive me for. I'm going to use some like ridiculous examples, cheesy, superficial, X-rated. Hello. Since yesterday afternoon, my son has been asking for Indian food tonight. Like every 10 minutes. Are we going to have Indian food tonight? I mean, tomorrow night. I say, sure. And then he goes and turns on the TV and he says, can we watch like Shah Rukh Khan singing and dancing? He's like a Brad Pitt of India. I say, sure. And then he says, so Dad, when you were in India, what exactly did you do? So everything revolves around India. My experience with him is that when he's had like 5 or 6 tablespoons of chicken tikka masala and rice and bread, his plate is half full. He just leaves it. He says, I'm full. I just spent like $100 on this food and finish it. No, I'm full. Or he comes home to me and says, Dad, I'm in love with this girl. I can't stop thinking about her. I says, oh, okay. And so he comes home a few days ago and says, so how's that girl? We had sex. I no longer think about her. Oh, well, why? I'm satisfied. And it's an interesting phenomenon. It's kind of like reading the gospel of, not the gospel, but reading the book of Job. Your father just died, your mom just died, your life is just turned upside down. And you don't know why you're suffering so much. And there is just so much hunger inside you to understand. And then you read the book of Job. And it seems like all the dots connect so wonderfully to one another. And then you walk away after like a few hours, say, I understand why I must suffer now, why my life is this way. And then, because the book left such a wonderful impression on you, you're just bored, silly. You say, oh, maybe I should pick up the book of Job. But it no longer has the same effect because you no longer approach it with the same pain. You're in a place of privilege. And in all those examples, what they have in common is that there is a state of hunger, and that hunger is a driving force. The more you have hunger, and the more difficult it is to satisfy it, it's not very difficult to satisfy your hunger of listening to Snoop Dogg. But it's more difficult to figure out, why did Michael Jackson go through all these physical transformations? What's going on inside his psyche? What happened in his childhood? And all of a sudden you realize, well, yeah, you can listen to, say, They Don't Care About Us, which is a beautiful piece of music. And 10 times after you say, no, I think I'm done with that. And that may take a week or two. But coming to understand why, he went through all these physical transformations, that may take you a lifetime, because you have to figure out what lives inside him. You have to figure out what abuse is, how it impacts us. You have to understand, why fathers abuse their kids, what happened to his siblings. I thought that family is supposed to be like a supportive unit, and yet everybody abandons everyone. And you realize that you were interested in Michael Jackson and his physical transformation, but all of a sudden you spend the past 5 years understanding parental abuse and its impact on children's psyche. And after a while, a friend of yours comes to you and says, so, Ariana, what are you doing? I'm reading a book about child abuse. Child abuse? I thought you were doing a project on Michael Jackson. I am. But in order to understand what the hell is going on inside his head, I have to go and do this first, And you realize that as your hunger has more depth, it becomes more difficult for it to be satisfied. Now, what is interesting about Siddhartha is the following. And that is a common theme, whether you're talking about Jesus or Moses or Muhammad or Lao Tzu or the Buddha or Malcolm X or Martin Luther King Jr. or Mahatma Gandhi. All people, what they have in common is a tremendous amount of privilege. Now, one of the things that privilege does is the following. If your parents have always loved you, you're never going to seek therapy. Why? Because your parents are right there, your grandparents are right there, your siblings are right there. Whenever there's an issue, you go and talk to them. If you have friends, as we did back home, from one end of the street to the other end, you just went into the street and you would scream, Amir is out. And all of a sudden, 50 kids would jump and then we would play soccer for like the next 10 hours. So you would never experience depression or loneliness, And that's one of the things about privilege. So what you have in the story of Siddhartha is he doesn't have any physical issues. In other words, he's not sick. He doesn't have a headache. Oh, my music is on. Sorry. And so he has a very healthy physical body. And that means that he doesn't need to spend time thinking about his physical issues because there is none. My sister-in-law, which is my brother's wife, she was always or has been always careful about what she eats. But when she got diagnosed with cancer, 4 or 5 months ago, the chemo, the radiation, the pills she has to take, the uncertainties of the future, about her life, about her physical body, about death, about the people she may have to leave behind because if the cancer is not cured. And you realize that all of her mental space is occupied with, I have cancer, what the hell do I do with it? You don't sit and talk about God, that's stupid. God can't do anything. Kaiser can, but not God. And such physical ailments, regardless of how spiritual you may be, for us commoners, you will eventually come down like an aeroplane and you say, okay, where do I need to go to fix this? We had a friend, forgive my digression, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, stage 4. She went to England, this is the 1970s. She went to England, no cure. She came to America, no cure. And she was young. But she was told that there is this strange fellow in India, and he has miraculous powers. And all she has to do is just go and visit him. And he has powers to heal. Now, for those of us who just live amongst commoners, such things are just mere fantasies. They're like hocus pocus. They're like Harry Potter. You can only see such things in movies. And, when you're desperate, you have no idea what you're capable of doing. Like when you're desperate to صد فصل بهار آید و بیرون ننهم گام ترسم که بیایی تو و در خانه نباشم. That I am so desperate in wanting to see you that I'm just not going to leave the house, just in case, by chance, you have this desire to knock on my door, and you in fact do knock, but I'm not there. And then you just leave a note. I came by, you weren't here. And they say, man, that sucks. I've been waiting for 5,000 years. She doesn't show up. I just go to pee, she shows up, and then she leaves. Or he. So if you're really, really desperate, you believe in all sorts of things, okay? So this woman was really, really desperate. So she said, oh, well, they say there is this guy with some powers. Let me just go. So she goes, and she thinks that he's just like some tiny guy sitting in a room. He can knock on the door, and she can knock on the door and enter. And she goes to visit him. There is this huge line of people desiring to receive his gifts, what in Persian Arabic we call barkat, a blessing that comes from someone who has to someone who doesn't, But barakat basically means like someone kind of gives you a gift that no other person can, imagine you go home and you YouTube Martin Luther King's dream speech, or you watch this movie that came out in the 1970s, Jesus of Nazareth, with Robert Powell. He's English, I think. Just the way he is, just the way he just plays this Jesus part, which is like almost a 7-hour movie. And the way he talks about the Beatitudes, the way he deals with the Pharisees, the way he fights them, just the way he is. And you say, well, I want to see that in my instructors. I want to see that in my friends, but no one can. So you keep watching, Robert Powell on the big screen because there's just something about the way he just acts. And you're just glued to your seat. You're mesmerized. That's it. That's what they call a blessing, a barakat. No one else can inspire those emotions about you except this person. And when you listen to Martin Luther King's dream speech, it may have been rehearsed, who the hell knows, but just the way he speaks it, with the passion, with the pain, with the history of America, with the pain of his people, You sit back and something about you just kind of comes to life. It's like God looks at this dust, breathes his own spirit, and all of a sudden says, in you I have hidden my own image. But it's going to be covered with an avalanche of garbage. You know, I mean, if you examine what you and I do throughout the day, it's just garbage filled with nonsense. And it takes Martin Luther King's speech, 12, 13, 14 minutes for all this nonsense to go away. It's like a vacuum cleaner. And then you receive the blessing. And then you shut off your laptop or TV, you go for a walk, and you're just thinking and reflecting and feeling, you know, and you walk certain parts of Oakland and say, why is there poverty? Why is there homelessness? Now, you have been a complete, like, dumb blonde for the past, like, many centuries of your life, but for the first time, this blessing given to you by Martin Luther allows you to come to life and think about life in a completely different way. You see. Privilege. So, since Siddhartha has no physical pain, he doesn't have to think about his body. He loves his father. He loves his mother. He loves his people. So there is no poverty in the realm of love. He has them. He knows what they look like. He knows that whenever, for example, he has a flu, his mother makes him soup. His father sends him someone to give him a massage. Okay? And he knows that whatever happens to him, his parents are there as a support system. Well, that's another privilege in the realm of emotions now. Then, when he is young and he is curious about the meaning of life, if there is God, if there is this, if there is that, he goes to his father, who happens to be an intellectual. He has read the Bible inside and out. So, Dad, who am I? Son, you were created by the gods. Son, something happened in the Garden of Eden. You were not supposed to do it, but you did it. You went against God's commandment. And it's your punishment down here. Sweat, blood, toil. Life is not meant for you to be happy. It's struggle, and it never ends. From the moment you open your eyes to the time you die, you're always pursuing something. And for the longest time, he was satisfied with the intellectual nourishment given to him by his father. But, and all of us, you know, defend our ridiculous positions in life. You know, I am a Muslim. Should you say anything negative about a Muslim, I will like slit your throat. I'm a Christian, and Jesus Christ is ABCD. I'm a Buddhist. And you can't talk badly about the Buddha. I worship him. I've had many students from Tibet, and they worship the Dalai Lama. He's like a reincarnation of the Buddha, right? And sometimes I say some of the things that he says is stupid. It makes no sense. You know? And they come to me after class. I mean, these like nuns and monks who eventually like drop my classes and go away. And all of us defend the position. Now, I wasn't there when Jesus was alive. I don't even know who the hell wrote those books. I mean, St. Paul has written 15 books of the 27 books of the New Testament. This is the guy who never saw Jesus, never broke bread with him. And yet, I say, oh, well, he had like a couple of visions. And then he was inspired to write. But inspiration and revelation are two completely different things. You and I are inspired all the time. You know, you see a homeless man, you're inspired to bring about justice, and then it disappears. That's what inspiration is. Revelation is transformative. It removes you from your flesh. You're no longer the same person. You know. And so, there is something about us that struggles to be free from the cage of ideas and beliefs, from a life that clips our wings. You know, and now one of the nice things about Siddhartha, which in Sanskrit means, the name Siddhartha means someone who's basically focused on physical pleasures and who pursues physical pleasures. Jesus is just Jesus. When he receives barakat or blessing, then he is Christos. He's Christed. Before that, he's just an ordinary guy. You know. And so there is this thing about him that says, you know, I have heard all the stuff. Sometimes the things I hear that have to do with philosophy and religion, they're inspiring and exciting. But you know, it's like you read all these books about love. And you say, God damn it, I want to sit by the phone for hours waiting for this person to call me. I can't feel that through reading books. I want to be infected with all these ideas that I read. How do I do that? Now, some of us are we have this desire, but it's never satisfied. And we easily forget about it. You know, Siddhartha is a different story. He says, you know what? I am healthy. I just don't want to play soccer anymore. And I don't want to play tennis anymore. And I don't want to go hiking anymore. My body has taken me to enough places to realize I no longer desire to go where my body wants to take me. Emotions. The feelings I get by eating chocolate ice cream, beautiful. The feelings I get by dancing, beautiful. The feelings I get by reading the book of Job, beautiful. But, you know, these feelings are like having an orgasm. They come and they go. I want something that's solid, that's something that never leaves me. Everything I touch after a few weeks turns into dust. Is there anything I can hold on to that doesn't disappear? That life doesn't come by and steal it? Remember the saying in one of the Gospels, do not store your treasures down here? And what is a treasure really? But whatever it is that you value, be it your boyfriend, be it your girlfriend, your glasses, the Bible, the Quran, it doesn't really matter what the hell it is. As long as you're attached to something, you will do whatever you possibly can to protect it. But what you're missing is time will eventually force you to lose interest. It's not even up to you. The book of Job may be good when your father has passed, but when you're happy, satisfied, enjoying your friends, you don't care about suffering. And even though you may long to read the book of Job because you're just done with your friends, you realize so many of intellectual components about you need to come together to be able to receive the barakat or the blessing from from the book of Job. A man who has everything. But because he has potential, he needs to be tested and he needs to fail again and again and again and again until he falls into chronic depression where he says, I want to die. And then what you have is people like us telling him, oh no, God is great. This is happening for a reason. Well, fuck you. Nothing is happening for a reason. I am the one who's suffering. What the hell do you know? My dad just died. Your dad is alive. You don't know about pain. Don't preach to me. You know, I remember Dick Cheney and it was a vice presidential debate some years ago. And you know, Republicans are really gung-ho about saying awful things about homosexuality and transgender and all those things. And they're having a debate on the stage. And I forget who the vice president was for the Democratic Party. He looks at Dick Cheney and says, well, I know Dick Cheney's daughter is gay. And I respect Dick Cheney. And he said a couple more things. And, you know, the commentator looks at Dick Cheney and says, well, do you have anything to say? And he says, I appreciate what my opponent said about my daughter and myself. Thank you very much. Now, all the time before that, he would come on the stage, Dick Cheney would, and say awful things about homosexuality. But when it touches himself, when it touches his daughter, he remains silent. That's what happens when something touches you. Not just intellectually. You know, you realize that this rug under your feet have been pulled away, and it's just a black hole, and there is no end to it, and there is no light. Okay? What you have is a man who says, I have no use of my physical body. It can't take me anywhere. I just can't have fun with it. And you say, you know what? What is the world of emotions but quickies in moments of inspiration? That's what they do. You con yourself, manipulate yourself, lie to yourself, deceive yourself, and you place your physical body in certain environments to get an emotional erection. And then emotionally you begin to masturbate. And then you reach climax. And then you say, well, I am done with this party. I am done with this conversation. It was good, but I'm no longer interested. Then you take your sorry behind home and you say, man, that was a complete waste of time. And then you realize all these books, they're bumper stickers. Socrates, an unexamined life is not worth living. Really? Are you serious? Do you know what happens when you examine your beliefs? Do you examine when you realize how incompetent you are? Do you examine and see how many gaps and holes live inside your belief system? How do you live with that? You are far better remaining unexamined and remaining your beliefs unexamined, because at least you believe. You hold something sacred. Do you really think that married people look at each other and aggressively examine the nature of their relationship? No, it'd be devastating. That's the cruelest thing you can do, unless you have fallen in love with another, or unless you're just depressed and sad and angry because you realize that life has shortchanged you. This is not what you signed up for. You signed up for love, and the only thing you have is a prison system. You know. And so Siddhartha comes to realize there is nothing, and which is such a sad thing. Life is huge. The world is beautiful. There are all these people we call diversity, inclusion, perspectives. You can learn from all sorts of people, but he has lost interest in everything. I mean, talk about chronic depression. And the only thing that's left is, you know what? There are some monks out there in that monastery, or some nuns in a convent somewhere. Well, why are they there? Well, they're there because they were after wisdom. Why didn't they come back to life? Because they realized life is not worth living. It's much better to live in a convent than Oakland. What's the use of hanging out with like 5,000 like useless people? Having neighbors who never get visitors. They're all depressed. And when you talk to someone, they want to talk about booze and Miley Cyrus. What sort of a life is that? So they stay in the convent. So he says, you know what? Maybe I should go pay them a visit. Maybe I should become like them. And then he comes to realize that even religious people deceive themselves very much like people who are on the outside. C.S. Lewis, a long time ago, wrote a book called The Screwtape Letters. And one of the best pieces of that book is where the devil looks at his nephew, who is soon to take over. He says to him, you don't need to tempt people who believe. We have won them over. They live their life without really examining them. Let them believe in the Jesus Christs. Let them believe in their Muhammads. Let them believe in their Buddhas. Leave them alone. The people you need to deceive and focus on are people like Socrates, who go around telling people, examine, doubt, don't trust, don't love, first test. Those are the people, because these are the people who are fighting to destroy the status quo. Do you know how difficult it was for the Catholic Church to burn all these other Bibles? Canonize them? No different than Trump. Eradicating this department and that department. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because not all of us can be a Buddha, not all of us can be a Malcolm X. Regular people like me, I just want to believe in some goddamn thing out there. Because I don't want to drown in sadness. I don't want to drown in meaninglessness. I want to believe in some goddamn thing out there to give my life some purpose. I don't love my boyfriend, but without him, I wouldn't like loneliness. And it's such a difficult place to be, because you walk into this uncertainty. You know, none of us in this class desire to have no power in life. You know, I remember when I would go to Hussein's house, sometimes you would go into your teacher's house with like emotions you don't really understand, but they're just very, very intense. And you're there trying very hard to hold yourself together, you know, not to cry, not to scream, not to express anger. Hello. How are you? I used to play chess. So, where the hell was I? Yeah. And so we're sitting on the sofa, the three of us, and then Hussein walks in. And then Hussein is always in like this very, very focused, intense, specific mood. He's always been. And so you don't want to lose control. In other words, you don't want him to look at you or for you to look at him, because you know you're going to break down. And breaking down is like a very private moment. And there is your friend Mehrdad, there is your other friend Hussein, and these are like your brothers. You've been around them for like 20, 30, 40 years. And you don't want them to see you in such a vulnerable moment, you know. And so Hussein looks at you and says, Amir, how you doing? Just don't want to look into his eyes, because you know you're going to break down. And so you mumble, I'm doing fine, Hussein, thank you very much. Anything new? No, nothing is new. You know, and you say, and it's because you just don't want to lose control. You don't want to lose power. What little power you have. Now that power that you're holding on to may be completely dysfunctional, but it is something that you still can grab on to. I mean, look, the Gospel of Mark, there is no virgin birth in it. He doesn't say, I am God. He doesn't say, I am bread. He doesn't say, I am light. He doesn't say, only through me. You have a gospel in which all of his disciples just don't understand him. You know who understands him? Centurion, a Roman guard, the devil. And 3 women near the end of the book. The last 12 verses which were added much later to the book. Now, if you were to exercise some intellectual honesty, you would say, man, the virgin birth is like the cornerstone of Christianity. Why doesn't Mark have it? Because it wasn't written by a guy who was interested in that. It wasn't written by a guy who lived in a community who believed in virgin births. Now, what are you going to do? What, you're going to denounce your faith? Of course not. You're not going to do any of those things. You're going to say, you know, Amir Sabzavari is a dick. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. I'm not going to listen to him anymore. In fact, I'm going to drop the class. And you don't do it because you're crazy. You don't drop the class because you're stupid. You do it because you want to hold on to your belief. And it's good. And it's good because in moments of crisis, you can walk your ass into the church and pray. Your belief saves you. It may not be real, but it saves you nevertheless. Siddhartha has nothing. His body is useless. And if you lock your body in like a tiny dark room, well, what sort of emotions are you going to get? There's no Beyonce there. There's no peach coffee there. There's no lake there. There's no sun there. There's nothing there. It's just all doom and gloom. And you look at other people taking classes, writing essays, pursuing goals. And at moments you say, man, I resent all those motherfuckers out there. I want to be like them. I want to have a desire. I want to have a goal. I want to enjoy sex. I want to drink. I want to have friends. But you say, you know, I've been there. I've done that. Even though I want to go out there and drink, I know the outcome. And it's like you become a fortune teller. You have access to the future. All things that you touch will eventually turn into dust. But before they do that, they will take your time, your money, your youth. And in the end, you're left with what? Nothing. You spend thousands of dollars on your wedding ceremony. And in the end, you have a video. And you watch it. Then you look at your husband. And you're disgusted by the life the both of you have created. You have kids. They're just junky. You go to school. You pay all this money. You have a PhD. And then you hit midlife crisis. And you say, man, I wasted all that time, all that energy. Nothing. And the Buddha says, I've been there. I've done that. I mean, you have to understand how profound the story of Jesus Christ is. That a guy doesn't need to wait till in his midlife, 40 or 50 or 60 or 20. He says, you know what? Life is fucked up. And he gets this at the age of 12. He doesn't talk Snoop Dogg. He doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. He says, when you take me to Jerusalem, you're going to find me in my father's temple. And you know what I'm going to talk about? God. And you have to understand how devastating it is for a 12-year-old. People play soccer. They play video games, but not this kid. He doesn't get a chance to be a child. He's like under an avalanche of all the serious questions. You know? And then, of course, you have the Gospel of Judas, who says, you know what? I don't want to talk anymore. I don't want to see anyone anymore. Kind of like Freud, who brings in the couch to his office and he says, you know what? I just don't want to look at people. They disgust me. I like to listen to the stories, but I don't want to look at them. I've heard them all. I just want to hear them, and imagine that they're like a puzzle. And try to piece this puzzle together. You know? And so he comes to realize, that Siddhartha does, that the monks deceive themselves very much like all the other people under the sun. He leaves everything. He leaves everyone. And then he runs into the Buddha. Imagine you run into Jesus Christ. But you know that if Jesus was to give you like a nugget of wisdom, well, what is that going to do for you? Inspire you for what, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 5 days, a month, and then what? Whatever wisdom he gives you, for you, it lives in the hands of time. What's going to happen? Eventually, it's going to fade. The intensity is going to go. Then you're just left with a bumper sticker. You know what Siddhartha does, which is very interesting? Looks at Jesus and says, you know what? I don't want to follow you. What I want from you is the following. When you left your parents, and for 18 long years you roamed the world, you went to Persia, Egypt, India, and you served under all these different teachers, you must have experienced something, like an opening of sorts. You know, it's like someone asking you, so you fell in love and you had sex with your companion and it was your first time. Tell me, how was it? And you try to use words. And he says, tell me exactly what happened and how it felt. I want that feeling. Say, it doesn't fit language. I don't know what to tell you. He says, you're useless. And he says, I don't want your words. Tell me what exactly that opening looked like. How did God's face look like? Was he white? Was he black? Was he blue? Was he a man, a woman, somewhere in between? Was he a nothing? Don't preach to me about wisdom. I want that which you experienced. And Jesus says, I can't do that. All I can tell you is give you these nuggets until these nuggets infect you. Then you will go into this dark hole, and then you get really, really depressed. And in your depression, only two options. You will either get something, or you will get nothing. It's a risk you take, you know. And, you know, it's kind of like that scene in the movie The Matrix where Morpheus offers him the red and the blue pills. He says, you can take the blue pill and you can wake up in your bed and you can think whatever you want to think. You can be the same old person, be a Christian or a Buddhist or a Muslim, a man or a woman, whatever. If you take the red pill, on the other hand, I will show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. And the problem with the rabbit hole is that there is no light there. All you have is uncertainty, a future that is unknown to you. But because you know what metacortex looks like, that's the company in which he works for, you know, something that's situated behind your brain, governs every part of who and what you are. All of your desires, nothing belongs to you. I mean, consider if you were born in the Middle East, you would be a Muslim, not a Christian. Out of all the sperms moving through the fallopian tube for your mother, if instead of sperm A, sperm B reached the egg, you would be a completely different human being. You wouldn't be you today. Most of who and what we are quite accidental, manufactured by this company we call metacortex. Thomas Anderson is tired of playing this stupid game. He lives alone, and he lives in room 101. And there is a reason. Because 0 and 1, off and on, that's what the student falls into, the conflict. You're on, you think, you reflect. There is, for those in this class who enjoy such ideas, read the Gospel of Thomas. It's like the third line in the book. Seek and you shall find. When you find, you'll be troubled. Well, what do you mean troubled? Well, troubled is a set of feelings and emotions. And you say, I don't want trouble. It takes power away from me. I can't enjoy my wife, my kids, my life. I don't want to think. Okay? And so that's where Thomas Anderson is. And whenever you live in conflict, I don't care if you have a boyfriend or 1,000 of them, you're always going to be alone in conflict. Pain forces you into loneliness, and there is no escape from it unless you go into off mode. Okay. Now, in numerology, you must always end up with a single digit, unless you're dealing with master numbers. Okay. So you add 1 plus 0 plus 1, you get 2. 2 is a number for contamination, corruption, pollution. 2 is also the number for society. Imagine you come to realize everything about society is just garbage. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? Even when he has fun, when he's told to follow the white rabbit, he goes into this like underground somewhere club. He doesn't mingle with anyone. He stands in the corner. He doesn't talk to anyone. And that's what happens when you have a conflict that's intense and lives inside your soul. Psyche, Greek for soul. Okay. Anyways, so any other questions? Forgive me, I forgot the question. Anna?
Do you think like taking the red pill is kind of human nature, the same as Adam and Eve eating?
No, some people just enjoy looking at it. Some people enjoy hearing about the red pill from other people. Some people enjoy touching the red pill. Some people enjoy just licking or smelling the pill. Some people put the pill in their mouth and then throw it out. Some people swallow the pill, but put their finger inside their throat to vomit it up. Some people take the pill, drink a few gallons of water. So the pill by itself is irrelevant. You need to understand that whatever the red pill symbolizes, it sits there. But you need to approach it from the right place. In other words, you may be at a stage where you simply want to hear it or read about it. That's as far as you can be invested. And there is nothing wrong about that. It's okay. Okay. There are people who stand at a different place in life where they say, you know what? I actually want to see it with my own eyes. I mean, if you know the story of Moses, what's interesting is all these Hebrews, they say, oh, the one God, the Hebrew God, this God, that God. Moses says, no, you guys just like imagine things. I actually want to see what this guy looks like. Okay. There are some people who just don't like to just read about it. They actually go on this quest to find it. And once they find, they realize there is something about this pill that's mesmerizing. It just captures you. But you say, well, if I stay too close to it, all these other parts of my life are just going to fall away. That's too much to lose. And you walk away. And you pray to God that you forget that experience. Because usually in life, you and I have experiences that stay with you for a long, long, long time. I mean, you don't go to a therapy because your father just looked at you meanly. You go to a therapist because your father looked at you meanly for like 20 years. Okay? So sometimes you have certain experiences where you want to forget, but you can't. And sometimes you don't really need to try to forget. You'll just forget them organically. Just give it some time. Or you can find perhaps other forms of pain that are much bigger than the one you suffered when you were a kid. Those are the best kinds. Okay? But we'll talk about that later. Then, there are some people who just kind of find themselves in the presence of this red pill just at the right time. And I don't know how it happens. I don't know why it happens. I don't know when the right time is and how the right time comes about. So the whole thing is a mystery. And I go back to something I've always believed, which is, I think if education, which means to bring out, that's what education means. That if teaching and learning were simple things, if they were easy, Muhammad would not need to fight like almost 40 battles. Moses didn't have to go against the wishes of Pharaoh and fight him and drown his soldiers and eventually abandon his people. Jesus didn't have to convince his disciples all the time. And what you realize is that teaching this red pill to anybody, first it depends what the teacher has to offer. Then it also depends on the readiness of the student and how much they're willing to sacrifice. And the only way you'll make any sacrifices is that if you really enjoy the person who has the red pill. If you don't like Morpheus, you're not going to go visit him. You don't really care what he has. So there has to be this attraction. And that attraction is a mystery. How it happens, why it happens, who the hell knows? So, all of us in this class enjoy music. We have our favorite artists. Sometimes you listen to the song that you've heard like 50 million times. And as you're driving home, for some strange reason, this song just goes inside you. And you just stop somewhere and you cry or you like dance in the car. Other times you listen and it's like it has no effect on you. And something about the melody, something about certain notes, something about the person's tone of voice, it just goes inside and you happen to be at just the right place. There are these openings that just happen. So. Marco.
When you come into class every day, do you have something that you want for the class? Like, I want to get this out of class today. You have a goal, an idea
No.
that you want. Why not?
So when we had, when our TV was working, there was a show on TV called Chopped. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's these supposedly really good cooks, four of them, come on the stage, and there are four referees who are very proficient cooks themselves. And these four referees, behind closed doors, decide what to put in these baskets. They call it mystery basket. And when the show is ready to open, they say, well, before you is a basket. Open it up, see what's in it. And you got to make like a dessert or the main dish, you know, and you have about 2 hours. Now, you look into the basket, there's like chocolate, there is shit, there is pork chops, and cilantro. And you say, well, what the hell am I going to do with this? You know? Now, if you happen to be a really, really good cook, as many of them are, they kind of make this beautiful, delicious dish out of like shit, you know? So I guess what I'm trying to suggest in that analogy is the following. Now, this is going to sound arrogant in your ears, but to me, it doesn't sound arrogant, but I'll say it nevertheless. I think I'm relatively good at what I do. I'm not great, but I'm mediocre. Questions are like mystery baskets, and the students are like mystery baskets. That when someone raises their hand and says, I have a question, I have enough experience, I have read enough, talked enough, wrote enough to kind of play with these ingredients called ideas. I don't need to have a plan, but I think I can cook ideas really well. And I can turn questions into something that smell good and taste good. I'm just a good cook.
I think that's the best way to teach others.
No, I think my brother teaches computer science, psychology, sociology. Every time we talk, which is almost every day for about 20, 30 minutes, he tells me about this research he was reading. And that's what he does in his classes. He spits out information for like hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, one information after another piece of information. He enjoys reading. He enjoys, and he's always been this way. The first class that I taught, I went there with notes. And every time I looked down at my notes and then look at students, I felt like a counterfeit. So I could never do it again. And the point I'm trying to make is my way of teaching may not work for you because you learn differently. Okay? Whether or not what you learn is valuable, that's a different story. You know, if you were to tell me, can you change your teaching style? I probably couldn't. Because part of it has to do with my temperament, which is hardwired in me. It's not manufactured, you know. The other is my experience, that I didn't read the New Testament to memorize the verses. I wanted to feel the book. That's what Hussein wanted me to do, you know. So I'm not going to come to class and tell you the history of the New Testament, even though I could. you know. And there is the other thing that you need to understand is that before you can think about something, first you have to be interested in it. And the only way you can be interested is when you have an emotional relationship with it. An intellectual relationship is good, it's just not very sufficient. Emotional relationship is good, but it can't be sufficient either. Because with a good amount of emotions, there comes a point where you say, I just don't want to be an emotional junkie. I want to understand this stuff. Now it comes down to intellect. And so you need both parts. You know, I think if you were to put my brother inside me, not physically, then what you would have is the yin and the yang, the female and the masculine, the male, the passive and the active. That there are times where the emotions infect ideas or information, so that information becomes passive, but the emotions become the active ingredient that then allows you to not only think about the information, but feel the information as well. Right? It's no good for you to come to class and take notes about the book of Job, but get no feeling from it. Because Job is a feeling guy. It's a feeling story. It's only much later in the book that he begins to understand. You know. And it's no use for you to take notes and come to class and spit out the information. It does no one any good because they can't read the book themselves. So, different people, different ways. You know, it's not a one size fits all. And there are days that this class may not work for you. And there are days that this class will work for you. It has nothing to do with me. I remain the same. You change. And then about 20, 30, 40 years time, you say, I think I'm a thinking sort of a fellow. You know, I'm guided by my reflection. I'm an extrovert. Or you may come to realize it's the opposite. You're an introvert. You feel. And then you become an emotional junkie, and then someone needs to come to your life and slap you to the side. Feeling is good. It's time for discipline now. Sit and think. Now, you may or may not be able to do those things. Yeah, Justin.
For the ministry, or do you really want something more planned out so that you know exactly what's going to happen?
Well, first of all, planning courses or classes, it's a really tough business. I mean, you have to kind of read a book, remove the feelings from yourself, and just write the steps down. I'm going to talk about, say, Martin Heidegger. He's an existential thinker of the late and early 20th century, late 19th century and then 20th century. Or Hegel, where you talk about, you know, certain schools of thoughts, Germany, you know. Whereas if you were to say, you know what, the entire corpus of Karl Marx really has to do with justice. That's all he wanted. He wanted poor people to have a chance. He was an equal opportunity sort of a fellow. He didn't want redlining. You know. And once you understand the very core philosophy of Karl Marx, you say, you know what, I don't want to talk about all this other stuff. I just want to talk about poverty because that's what infected Karl Marx. I mean, to the point where his wife, Jenny, told him, look, our daughter died. Can you go out there, get a fucking job, buy a goddamn coffin so we can bury her? And he says, I'm writing. I don't have time for that. You know, that you love your daughter, you love your wife, but you're addicted to the way you think about poverty, about injustice, about the sort of exploitation that all of us under an avalanche of. And he says, you know what? My daughter was 2. She lived her life. She's dead. I can't bring her back to life. I'm not Jesus Christ. Let the dead bury the dead. I am writing, and you need to understand that up to the 1980s, almost 70% of world population gravitate towards Marxism. I mean, that's how profound Karl Marx is. You know, he was bigger than Jesus Christ. He was bigger than Buddha. He was bigger than Muhammad. Relentless blitz of advertisement, demonizing communism, Marxism. Now everybody thinks that Karl Marx is evil. The point I'm trying to make is nothing really. Anyone else? Skyler.
You think that, like you kind of talked about the red pill versus blue pill. Do you think like you kind of go towards the red pill? Like that's the only way you kind of have to let go.
You don't let go of anything. Things just fall from you. I mean, look, imagine you were my son and you came to realize that you have been in the wrong body. Okay. The blue pill would be that you coming to me saying, hey dad, I say, hey son, and you would allow me to think of you the way I've always, and to hang out with you the way I've always. It's familiar for you and it's familiar for me. And though deep down you've always felt that you were just born in the wrong body, but you kept it to yourself. And every time you say to yourself, Skylar, let it go. Go to your father. But something holds you back. Then you get to be 20, then 30. Then you realize all the things that obstacled you from telling me how you really feel. They're no longer there. You've gained more confidence. You're at a different stage in life. You kind of look at my body language, the way I am, the way I'm aging, and I'm becoming much more softer as the years go by. You say, Dad, I guess I'm telling you, what is it? I'm really not a male. I'm a female. And I want to go through this process. Okay? Now that's going to be the red pill because I don't really, and for you and for me. Because first, you don't really know how I'm going to react. Okay? Maybe I'll scream, maybe I'll shout. Maybe I'll hug you, kiss you. I have no idea how I'm going to react to this. Maybe I'll jump from a cliff. Okay? So red pill has to do with a great amount of uncertainty. And you don't need to make this philosophical or religious. If there is any truth about you, if there is anything you want to share, but you've held it private, coming out is difficult. You have a journal. Go home today and try to read out the journal to your parents. You can't. But there will come a time where you will hand your journals to your mom. Because your mom's opinion of you no longer matters. You're going to love her regardless. And you know that she's going to love you eventually. You can't let go of anything. There's going to be a great amount of resistance. If you're not ready to let go of alcohol, you're going to have relapses over and over and over again. And all of us have had crummy companions. And we say, we're never going to go there again. And then you go back to the same person with a different body. Okay? Then there comes a point where you actually grow tired of making the same goddamn mistakes. And then you become a good student, not of the Bible. You become a good student of, well, how does one get into a good, healthy relationship? Now you begin to read books. Now you begin to ask pointed questions. Now you begin to understand. Then you go out. And for the first time, you realize you're actually capable of hanging out with someone who's healthy. Once you have a good amount of understanding, all the awful things that live inside all of us, they just fall organically. But it takes many years of wrestling.
Do you think that, I guess the red pill kind of comes from within and it just will come out eventually or it won't?
All I know is this. If you go home and listen to the dream speech, and if you feel that it generates inside you emotions that your math class don't create, that this class don't create, conversation with your friends don't create, okay? If you like those sets of emotions, there's only one option, or there are many options, but one thing you can do if you enjoy the dream speech emotions. Protect that seed. In other words, find genres of music, of literature, of people who have the same quality that that speech gives you. The more you're around them, the less you'll be amongst your friends. And after 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you may find yourself to be a Martin Luther in a different version. Nothing is going to last without protection. If you like the way this class makes you feel, come to the office. Get the audios. Find yourself philosophical friends. Read philosophical books. This class by itself will not do you good. I mean, it may inspire you to have perhaps relatively good conversation with your friends, but that doesn't mean anything. Come.
Is work something that you should be about, or just
I think people like Jesus, Karl Marx, the hippie kind of ideas, I think they do us wrong. I think it's wrong to preach to people, just play basketball and you'll be a Michael Jordan. The truth is, Michael Jordan is a freak. He does things that most people can't do. It doesn't mean you should avoid playing basketball. It doesn't mean that you should avoid even desiring to be a pro, get picked by one of those NBA teams. But the thing is, we only have few geniuses in every sport, whether it's a spiritual sport or intellectual sport. You don't find very many Noam Chomskys. You don't find very many Freuds. You don't find very many Tiger Woods. You know, I think most of us just have no choice but to work, to earn a living, to put food on the table, to make sure our kids are safe. Once in a while, you will find people, once in a while, that they're immensely passionate, and the powers in the universe, I suppose, if you want to use that kind of a language, come together, and that person makes a livelihood through that passion. You know? Something I've always told my students, those who go and get their master's and then their PhD in philosophy and humanities, is listen, okay, so you enjoyed the class, fine. All right, so you want to go major in philosophy and humanities, fine. Okay. Once you walk in the classroom, then you're going to experience your own salt. You may open your mouth, realize that you're not that good. That's okay. You're just a different kind of a plumber, that's all. But you are putting food on the table. You are surviving a world that is vicious and cruel. You have a job, you make money. And with that money, you can help your parents. There is nothing wrong with that. You don't need to be a Socrates. Some people are just lucky, you know. And one of the nice things about the Greeks, they told us this some 2, 3, 4, 5,000 years ago. Listen, you have no power over your life. You're not in control of any goddamn thing out there. It's the goddess Fortuna. If she wants you to be passionate, you will be passionate. Now, you may be passionate without a job, okay? Someone like, what's that guy's name? That painter. You know what I'm talking about, that useless guy. The romantic, depressed fellow. Forget his name. Anyways, there are some people who paint. They're very poor. They become famous upon their death. Who? No, he was useless. Yeah, Vincent van Gogh. I mean, he was depressed. He married a whore, and the whore betrayed him. You know? And there are some people, who, like Kanye West, useless. He's really useless. His music is just bad. But lucky for him, he lives in a trashy culture where his music is like Bible. So the point I'm trying to make is life is a gamble. You have kids. Sometimes they turn out okay. Sometimes they turn out great. Sometimes they turn out crummy. پسر نوح با بدان بنشست خاندان نبوتش گم شد. That Noah's son hung out with the wrong people, and all the heritage given to him by this lineage of prophecies, they all disappeared. Even if you're Noah, even if you're one of those prophets out there, you have no idea what the gods are going to do to your family. So, luck. Luck. Now, you may not like people like me, Carmen, brown skin from the Middle East. You may run into one, and despite all of your biases and bigotries, you may one day look at him and say, I love you. And then you may dare to take this person home to your parents. Kind of like the Bruce Lee story. So, yeah. Lilac, it's the last question. Go ahead. You guys know that there is no school next week, right? Saloni قبل أن تفقدوني. It's a saying in Arabic. It means talk to me before you lose me. It's kind of like, it's advice to kids. If there's anything you want to say to your parents, say them now, because you never know. Or friends or lovers or anything. Well, Skylar.
I was just wondering about a question next week.
Anyway.
A question in campus.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, it's spring break, but you don't get a break from thinking. What time is it? It's time. Well, it's good to see all of you. Take care of yourself.